This RealAg Radio podcast is brought to you by Travalis herbicide from FMC. The concentrated formulation delivers 80 acres per case of premium control. It also has a low use rate and a built-in adjuvant. And with the 2025 FMC cashback program, Travalis herbicide saves you time and money. Visit ag.fmc.com/ca for more.
Hey, RealAg Radio audience. Thanks for downloading the RealAg Radio podcast. I want to mention to you, we got a webinar coming up on Thursday, March 27th, 11 o'clock Eastern. We have the former USTR ag negotiator and current president and CEO of the National Milk Producers Federation, Greg Dowd. We've got former Alberta finance minister and former president of the CCA, Travis Taves. We got Tyler Bjornson from Bjornson & Associates. We've also got a great trade reporter, the chief trade reporter for AgriPulse, Oliver Ward, and myself and Tyler McCann from CAPI. This is a great webinar opportunity. Real Agriculture partnering with CAPI to bring you the latest in information in terms of what's happening in this just really, really tumultuous time when it comes to tariffs and trade, because you know it impacts your farm. So you can go to realagriculture.com to register or send me an email and I'll help you out. shaney@realagriculture.com. It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Wednesday midweek edition of the show. Thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Also, a big shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast as well. Today on the program, we are going to find out what's going on in the markets with Arlan Suderman of StoneX. I specifically want to ask him about this Trump policy that a lot of ag industry groups are very upset about, concerned about, in terms of putting a high fee on goods coming in and out of the country on Chinese ships. And this is a U.S. policy potentially that has big-time impacts on Canada as well, and Mexico, because the market finds a way. And if it's too expensive to use U.S. ports, they're going to look to go to Mexican and Canadian ports. Do they have the capacity to do that? And what kind of impact could that have on something like the Canadian railway system? So this is one you got to be following indeed. We've also got Cornie Thiessen here from ADAMA and a product spotlight. Gill is going to be here from MNP. He is their risk management manager. He knows BRM better than anybody. And we've got some potential changes that are being pushed by Minister Blois, and we're waiting for the provinces to really get on side here. And we'll get AJ's perspective on some of the changes that are being proposed and if they're worthwhile and are there political risks to them depending what happens in this election. We'll also have an edition of the Farm Safety Roundup today as well, which you are not going to miss, dealing with safety in some of these very turbulent times indeed. Now, if you have any feedback on today's show, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find Real Agriculture across all of the different social media platforms. You're also more than welcome to call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. March 27th, Thursday. Tomorrow, we are going to be having a webinar. Real Agriculture is hosting it with CAPI. And Tyler McCann and myself have been putting this together. And it's going to be pretty fascinating, I think. We got a great lineup of people. I always think in trying to understand an issue, you got to try to get your head around what the other side is saying and how they're thinking, because that tells you a lot about what your strategy needs to be. And that's what we're going to do. So what we've got is Oliver Ward, who's the head trade reporter with AgriPulse. He's going to join me for a 15, 20-minute conversation, really digging in on the U.S., what's happening in the Washington bubble. What is the Trump administration's intentions with some of their trade strategy? How is it different than Trump 1.0? How is it similar? What are some of the things they're trying to be accomplished? What are some of the ramifications of that? Just to understand from Oliver's perspective and his great trade reporting for AgriPulse. Then we've got a panel. And Tyler McCann's going to have a panel of Travis Taves. Now, he's the former president of the Canadian Cattle Association. He is also the former Minister of Finance in Alberta. So, dude's got some street cred. We've also got on the panel Tyler Bjornson with Bjornson and Associates. Tyler was with the Canada Grains Council. Like, he has done some work in the meatpacking industry. Tyler knows his way around the trade arena. And then somebody else that's got a lot of knowledge about the trade arena is Greg Dowd. He is currently CEO of the National Milk Producers Federation, but he used to be, he was with Aimpoint Research for a while, but he was also the chief ag negotiator with the USTR in the first Trump administration. So he worked side by side with former USTR Robert Lighthizer in that role. So he knows a lot about trade and the American side of this as well. So that we're going to be able to put all this together, have some good conversation, some good questions that falls on my shoulders, and we're going to try to kind of understand this and try to help you, the Real Ag audience, better understand what's at foot, what's happening, so that you can react accordingly. Indeed. So you can sign up for the webinar by going to realagriculture.com, or of course, just send me an email. I'll help you get connected. shaney@realagriculture.com. Let's take a break. When we come back, we got Arlan Suderman from StoneX right after this.
It is time for today's product spotlight from Nutrien. It's Mike Howell, senior agronomist, and of course, host of the Dirt podcast. Where can growers go to find the latest in crop nutrition information to really dig into that ROI question on fertility this year?
We always like to recommend that people check out their local extension service. That's always a great source of information for local information. Also want to put in a plug for our website. That's nutrien-economics.com. On that website, we've got a lot of tools that growers can use to help determine their ROI. We've got a lot of research articles that are linked to that from your state research programs. We've got a lot of calculators there. We have a nutrient removal calculator. We've got an ROI calculator. A lot of useful tools on that website that growers can use. We've got an Ask the Agronomist feature. So if you've got a question on your local farm, you can type out a question there and I'll get that, or one of my counterparts will get that question, and we can get you an answer back on that pretty quickly. And all of this is free. It's an open website. Anybody can use that.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com, and what an opportunity! Oh my gosh! You think you can't grow better wheat? You are absolutely wrong. We're going to show you how to strive for those record wheat yields that they get in the UK and in New Zealand. You can grow 150 bushel wheat. I'll show you how.
Catch WheatPete's Word every Wednesday on RealAgriculture.com or download the podcast on iTunes or Spotify. Welcome back to Real Ag Radio. Hey, with volatile markets and rising costs, now's your chance to be a part of the solution. It's time to secure your future with Genesis Fertilizers. Gain control and ensure access to locally produced nitrogen. Act now to protect your farm's future for generations. Visit genesisfertilizers.com to learn more. We're joined right now on Real Ag Radio by Arlan Suderman of StoneX. Arlan, it's great to have you back on the program.
Yeah, it's good to be back, Sean. There's a lot going on to talk about.
Yeah, I want to start off with China. And we saw recently Canada's been dealing with tariffs on a number of different ag commodities, aquaculture products, but as well as pork, field peas, canola oil, and meal. What's demand like in China right now? Are they afforded the opportunity? Is the timing right to be able to apply these kind of tariffs?
Oh, yes and no. Overall, their economy continues to struggle. It's a real problem. They've been stimulating it since September to varying levels of success. They've seen some sectors where they've poured the greatest stimulus in, see some increases, but the data shows that increase in demand is purely due to the stimulus and nothing more. When you look at consumer confidence levels, they still remain near record low levels, and that's tied closely to the property sector. And the property sector has seen a little bit of an uptick in housing demand, but for the uptick that they've seen, they've only decreased the inventory of housing by less than 5%. So they have some massive problems. And why is housing such a big factor? Here in the United States, we talk about the wealth effect. Consumers continue to spend if their 401ks are growing in value and if their house is growing in value. They feel wealthier, so they spend money. In China, their wealth is tied up in their property. And so if their property is gaining value, they have that wealth effect. If it's losing value, as it has been, then they're contracting their spending. They're fearful, and so they don't spend. And so that's the situation they're finding themselves in. Meanwhile, they're really worried about jobs, with much of the West now putting tariffs and restrictions on various products that they have. That's reducing their manufacturing. And even Russia now has started to put tariffs on EVs that were coming from China. China owned 60% of the car market there prior to this. And so even Russia has now started to pull away from China and buying. So they're in significant trouble right now. Specifically, when it comes to soybeans, for example, this is the time of year they're going to get them from Brazil and Argentina, primarily Brazil, because the currency exchange rates are going to be cheaper. But when it comes to rapeseed meal, that's going to be tight. So I anticipate they'll probably use more soybean meal because that's readily available right now from South America. Most of the other products, they're kind of pulling back somewhat in demand and getting it from elsewhere. I think rapeseed meal is probably the one that's going to hurt them the most, but they're still sticking with those tariffs on Canada.
Yeah, do you see them having these tariffs in place for a long period of time, or is this a summer sort of fling, or is it just too early to tell?
The last time they did this, it seemed like they did it until it really got painful at home, and I anticipate that to be the case as well. And I think that's the way most countries approach tariffs. They'll do it until it becomes real painful at home and they're losing political clout. Of course, political strength in China is something different than it is here, but it's still a factor overall. And right now, China finds itself increasingly put in a corner, being isolated, and even its brick and road initiative trade that goes into Russia and into Eastern Europe via the railway that they've built there, that even is slowing down dramatically in trade. And so they are feeling increasingly isolated. And so I see Xi Jinping, he has removed everybody from his inner leadership circle who would disagree with him or tell him news that he doesn't want to hear. And so I fear that he's not hearing what he needs to hear. And so that is a concern. And when that happens, typically leaders just kind of dig in their heels and kind of maybe increase the battle, so to speak.
And it's kind of hard when you look at some of the trade flows, when you have threats of tariffs or anticipation of thicker borders on the in trading lanes. Mm-hmm. We see front loading. We saw that in Canadian canola going to China last fall, Canadian potash going to the U.S. prior to the 25 planting season. That front loading can be a little bit of a distraction from like, oh, there's increased demand. Well, yeah, maybe over the course of the year, it's going to work out to about the same number.
Yeah, and even though USDA claims that's not why they left their balance sheets for corn and soybeans unchanged, even though the export pace is well above the seasonal pace needed to hit USDA's target, and corn it's almost 200 million bushels above. I think that there probably was some of that front loading ahead. Not to the extent perhaps that USDA thinks, but I think there was some, not just because of the tariffs, but because of the initiative that President Trump is proposing to charge a port fee on Chinese-built ships or ships coming from fleets that contain Chinese ships. And I think that has increased shipments of Sinograin purchased soybeans going to China. The tariffs are less of a deal with them because they're state-run, so they'd be paying themselves basically the tariffs. But the fees would be a totally different thing. And so I think there we've seen some front-loading of the demand ahead of that, not knowing exactly what that's going to be. But the whole industry right now is in turmoil, not knowing exactly where this is going to go.
Let's talk about that proposed idea of fees on Chinese ships or companies that have Chinese ships in their fleet. Details are just starting to come out this week. I had somebody tell me yesterday, Arlan, this is the most consequential policy out of the Trump administration in terms of impact on ag in comparison to anything that has been talked about so far.
Oh, yeah. The potential is there for impact to be far greater than the tariffs. I personally think that there will be a more pragmatic approach before it's implemented. I do believe that President Trump has the conviction that rebuilding our ship industry is necessary for national security and wants to do something to do that. But doing it as proposed would kill trade, significantly hurt it, because 55% of the ships out there right now are Chinese built. So most of the fleets have Chinese ships in them, let alone those that are directly Chinese flagged. And so, for example, I calculated up, if you got one Panamax ship carrying corn, that could be up to 57 cents per bushel increase in cost. That would, dramatically impact the competitiveness of U.S. corn on the world market. And that's not just going to China. That would be a Chinese ship that might be going somewhere else to another customer or something like that. So I do think that there will be something more pragmatic come before it's actually applied. But until we hear what that is, there's going to be a lot of concerns. And we're already seeing shippers back away from making commitments or putting into the contract that the buyer has to be responsible for additional fees that may be charged.
And one thing I've picked up on in the fee on Chinese ships versus the overall tariff strategy, we've heard industry groups a little bit quieter on, let's see what President Trump's up to here negotiating. But on the ship fee, there's a lot more pushback and a lot louder pushback in terms of the consequences.
There is, and that's another reason I think that we'll end up with something more pragmatic, because I think cooler heads will prevail, and we'll see, we'll come to a more reasonable way to get to his end objective than just killing trade.
What's your thoughts on the meat sector? It's been a pretty good run here for the beef industry. What's your thoughts on protein?
It is, and I was just reading over before we talk some of the latest data and looking at it and how the cutout is really gaining in value here. And it comes back to the consumer. And we saw a dip in the market yesterday, and consumer confidence numbers came out, because if the consumer's not confident, historically, they don't want to pay up for the higher cuts of meat, but yet we saw the choice cuts jump, $8 or so. And the consumer's seemingly still there, and that's been surprising overall. And I think the industry is really nervous. How long will the consumer stay there? Protein supplies are tight. When we look at beef, when we look at pork, they're tight. We're importing massive amounts of beef. We're feeding to record carcass weights in order to try to supply it, but they're still tight, and the consumer is still paying for it, which is really surprising. The question is, how long will that continue? Consumer confidence dropped below the range that we've seen over the last several years, as the consumer's worried about where tariffs are going to take us and how inflationary will that be. And so the ag industry is concerned.
Chinese pork production, is it? I guess what's its state? And I'm thinking relative to some of the meal demand.
Yeah. Overall, when we look at Chinese pork production, it's kind of stabilized. It's been in decline because population's been in decline. Per capita consumption of pork has been in decline. And so when we look at soy meal, they've reduced inclusion of soy meal from 17% down to 12.5%, but now they're increasing it a little bit to replace some of the rapeseed meal that was going in. So now the thinking is from our people in China that we will see a little bit of an increase, maybe to 13.5 to 14% inclusion of soy meal in the rations, which is reversing that trend that we've seen. But overall, we're seeing demand for pork can decline because of population decline, and that means that soybean demand is flattening. I had a conversation with one of our top brokers in Brazil yesterday and one of his top customers about this very thing. Demand from China is really flattening. The last 2 years, we've seen strong shipments because they've been building up the reserves against a potential tariff war with the West. Geopolitical tensions rising, so they're getting those reserves built up. But once they have those reserves built up, I think we'll see the full effect of that declining demand.
Okay, and to wrap up, keys that you're focused on heading into 2025 planting here. I'm sure the corn acre number is one of them, but is there any others?
Well, the tariffs and the shipping fees are the big one. We'll learn a lot about tariffs over the coming week to 10 days. particularly, and then we have the acreage reports coming out on Monday and the stocks reports, both of which could have some significant surprises. I'm centering on around 94.4 million acres, up from 90.6 million of corn last year. On soybeans, I'm dropping it down to 84 million, down from 87.5 million. And the key to remember with both of those acreage numbers, if we have a good growing season, which one of our forecasters today is calling for a good growing season, then we'll build stocks. But if we have any type of heat and dryness come in and drop yield 5%, we're going to be tight on stocks on both. So both are at play this year with those acreage numbers.
Well, Arlan, really appreciate you joining us here. All the best to you, and we've got lots to talk about as we look at 2025 going forward. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Shaun. It's been a pleasure.
We definitely need to continue to follow this potential policy of these port call fees of Chinese ships. This is, as Arlan talked about, this is a pretty consequential potential policy. And where does it land at the end of the day? The current version, according to many people that follow this in the agricultural industry, not good. Also think about some of the pressure it could potentially put on product coming into Canada or going down to Mexico to try to use those ports instead of the American ones to avoid the fees. And think about the load that puts on things like the railways to try to service that increased capacity. And do the ports have the capacity to do it? The market finds a way. It finds a way. It is definitely like that. Hey, enhance your production potential and boost your bottom line by selecting reliable varieties of wheat, durum, barley, and oats from Alliance Seed. Elevate your fields at allianceseed.com, or you can call 877-270-2890 to elevate your fields at allianceseed.com. We'll be right back on RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM, right after this.
Growing corn? With Envita, you can cut your nitrogen and maintain yield, or maintain nitrogen and increase yield. Envita takes nitrogen from the air and turns it into nitrogen for your corn. It provides a right place, right time source of nitrogen to maximize your yield. Farmers who use Envita see healthier plants, bigger cobs, and less tip back. Envita is guaranteed to add more bushels to every treated acre. Start growing with Envita. Visit azotic.com to learn more. That's AZOTIC.com.
Get all the information you need to keep your pulse crop healthy and profitable with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School is a free YouTube video series covering agronomy, research, and more across a host of different pulse crops. It's also available as an audio podcast wherever you download or stream your favorite podcast. Check us out on YouTube or visit RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School, brought to you by BSF Canada.
I'm Lindsay Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomist, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomist with me, Lindsay Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. It's now time for a product spotlight with ADAMA Canada. And we're joined right now by the general manager for ADAMA Canada. It is Cornie Thiessen. Cornie, how are we doing today?
Doing real well, Shaun. Good to see you.
Yeah, and we're going to dive into the innovation strategy that you've been working on at ADAMA and how that leads to some exciting new products, such as the most recent launch of a unique wild oat herbicide for wheat. Tell us about it.
Yeah, the new product is Gazado. It's something we're really excited about because it's the first time that Canadian farmers have had access to a multi-mode of action cereal graminicide. So something that should really help in the fight against wild oats, particularly proactive resistance management.
Oh, cool. So tell us a little bit about, I know in the area where farmers are really hungry for better ways to take care of some of the weeds on the farm. So from your perspective at ADAMA, what does that innovation process, what does it look like?
Yeah, our innovation process has a bit of a unique approach that we've adopted many years ago, and it served us really well. And the focus there really is on the innovation process starts by asking farmers what are their problems and what are their solutions that they're missing in their operations today. And that can be a bit complicated because obviously different farmers in different countries have different needs. And so it means that you have to be comfortable with a really big diversified portfolio. But the upside is that you get solutions that really meet your biggest concerns. And for Canadian farmers, particularly on the prairies, wild oat management is one of those things that they consistently gave us feedback on, is that they need better tools and solutions there. And that really is what started the development of this product over 7 years ago when we heard that request from growers.
Yeah, so tell us about Cazado. I know it's a product you're really excited about, so tell us more.
Yeah, so the feedback we had from farmers was the concern about wild oats and the resistance management. And when we talk to academics about what's the right way to manage resistance, typically one of the most common strategies is to have multi-mode of action mixtures. Obviously, rotating different groups is a good strategy, but typically it's regarded as a better strategy is if you can stack or pre-mix those multi-modes. So that was what we challenged our chemists with. Of course, their first question back to us was, well, which two active ingredients would you like us to try to mix together? And that's where we landed on pinoxidin and thiocarbazone as the ones that we challenged them. Their response was, that's going to be hard. But they gave it a crack. And after many years of working on it, they were able to develop a formulation that was stable and had the ability to have both actives be able to do what they needed to do in the field. So a really neat innovation that took a lot of work from a chemistry standpoint to come up with a winning formulation.
So when they came back to, and they're like, that's going to be hard. You're like, I don't care.
Yes.
Figure this out, because it can be a real mind bender when you're trying to sort some of these puzzle pieces out.
Yeah, and there's obviously a desire to say, hey, what's using a more established kind of chemistry pathway, but we did have some really aggressive research and development leads in our Israel lab that did ask us to say, give us some hard stuff to work on. And so this was one of those areas that they were really excited about to see if they could solve this problem, because it is a well-known challenge to make different groups of active ingredients cooperate in the same formulations. And so this was one they took on. Although they did say initially it's a low chance we'll be able to figure it out, they did eventually get it figured out, and they're really proud of the fact that they've been able to deliver this product to us.
Yeah, persistence counts, indeed. So from ADAMA Canada's perspective, where are you focusing some of your innovation efforts next?
Pretty good range of things that we're focusing on. So in particularly in fungicides, we've had some really nice product launches over the last couple of years, but now we're developing some new active ingredients in our pipeline. So we're really excited to not only bring better formulations using existing active ingredients, but to start to add new active ingredients and mode of actions into our pipeline for Canadian farmers. So we're pretty excited about that. We also just had a very successful launch of a product called Brevis in the United States. It's an apple thinner. And so we're going to bring that to the Canadian market as well, hopefully for next spring. We're growing our pre-seed herbicide portfolio over the next 18 months. So that's an exciting segment for us to participate in. And then also on the insecticide. So we have another product launch this summer and gearing up for 2 more next year. And then later this decade, also a new active ingredient that we're pretty excited about because of its pollinator safety profile. So pretty rich pipeline targeting the majority of crops and across a number of product segments. So things look pretty bright in terms of innovation.
If somebody wants more information on Cazado or any other products in the ADAMA lineup, where do they go?
Well, we always love for people to talk to their local full-service retail because they can really help translate the product to the local conditions. But we have a full team of salespeople and agronomists in the field, and definitely they can figure out the contacts through our website, adama.com.
Yeah, great stuff. There's also, if you go to the Cazado page, there's a great video there on dual mode wild oat control in wheat. So check that video out as well. Hey, Cornie, thanks so much for joining us here today. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks.
Hey, we'll be right back on RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, right after this. Every farmer defines success differently. and every farm has its own unique challenges. Corteva Biologicals is partnering with Canadian farmers for their success, offering unique solutions that improve and protect crops from start to finish, based on each field's needs. Using proven, predictable solutions across all crop stages, Corteva Biologicals helps build healthy, productive, and profitable farms. Corteva Biologicals. We're growing together.
It's summertime, and you've got a lot of important decisions to make when it comes to your corn crop. Let the Corn School on RealAgriculture.com help guide you through those big decisions with input from leading experts in the field. If it's spray timing, disease identification, or any other field issue, the Corn School's got you covered. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com. Brought to you by BASF and Pride Seeds.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio, delivering reliable agricultural lab testing for your crop, soil, feed, water, and seed. SGS Canada is uniquely positioned, ready to elevate your business in Canada and the United States. Call us now at 1-800-952-5407. That's 1-800-952-5407. Well, we've been covering here at RealAg Radio the potential changes that Minister Blois is suggesting on the BRM front, and part of this is to deal with some of the trade issues that Canada has been facing and the concerns about farm profitability in the cropping sector as we head into 2025. Here to break down the potential changes and what's at work and what maybe you need to do as a producer, it is AJ Gill, who is responsible for BRM programming at MNP. AJ, how are we doing?
Very good, Shaun. Thank you so much for having me back on your show and to talk about some of these proposed changes that Mr. Boyce kind of indicated, and they got announced on March 22nd. I believe he was on your show, and he didn't get into it, but he was kind of saying there'll be some stuff that'll be coming down. So I think this is what he was talking about.
Yeah. So I guess what is being proposed? I guess let's start there.
Yeah, let's break it down. So the changes that are being proposed is for 2025 year only at this time, and the biggest change is going to be an increase to the cap to $6 million. The farming has changed quite a bit. Farm sizes have increased, and that's been always a pain point from the industry, and we've been pushing it to the provinces and to the federal government that a $3 million cap needs to increase. It's been in place for the last 20 years, even if you took simple inflation, and I think that's kind of what they did. They took a 3% inflation and said, okay, what would this cap should look like just to cover your expenses on your farm, and they came up with the $6 million number, so which is a very positive change. So the AgriStability payments cap will increase from $3 million to a $6 million.
That's a big change.
That is a big change. And the other change that's coming up is they are increasing the payout rate, the compensation rate, from 80% to 90%. If you recall, a couple of years ago, it went from 70 to 80%, and now that's being bumped up to 90%. So this means anybody that is having a disaster on their farm is going to be in a payment situation will be getting an additional 12%, roughly 12% increase to their AgriStability payment. And a couple other smaller changes which are leaving it with the province is to get the funds quickly into the farmers' hands. They are increasing the interim payment rate to 75%, so you can actually get 75% off your potential AgriStability payment before you even complete your taxes and all that. So you can apply for that in September, October, when you know what your year is going to look like. Once you farm for 6 months, you can apply for an interim application. And the other piece that they're adding to it is giving the provinces an option to trigger something called TAP. TAP is a targeted advance payment. So usually brought in situations like floods, disaster, disease, any of that kind of stuff, or border shutdown, so they can get the payment into the farmers' hands very quickly. It's usually quick and dirty. There's been some issues with TAP. I'm not personally a big fan because it does lead to sometimes and overpayment situations down the road. We've had that in the past. That has happened to us. It kind of doesn't feel fit with the farmers after the fact. But it is a mechanism to get the money into the farmers' hands very quickly. If you're in a situation where you need this money now, but you can't wait for, when the interim applications can take up to 30 to 45 days, and they're not, they always sometimes can take a bit longer. With the TAP, is usually based on whatever inventory you have on hand or based on your prior year's records, and they'll get the money to your hands very, very quickly.
Now, this is, of course, the suggestion from Minister Blois. Next steps, because we know this is a Fed-Prov share, right?
Yes.
So do the provinces have to agree to these changes, or how does this work? What's the process?
So most BRM programs are 60-40 split. So 60% of the funding for the business risk management is coming from the federal government, 40% coming from the provinces. So feds have announced, and I think there was a quote somewhere, it's going to be $100+ million additional money that'll be coming out through this change for 2025. So the impact of that 40% is going to be on the provinces. And they are, so far, every province that I've talked to seems to be in favor of. So I think this is something that'll be coming through very quickly. Once, this announcement came in a day before, I think day or 2 days before the writ was dropped. So right now it's with the provinces. They're working at it, trying to figure out what they need to do to go to Treasury from their side of things to look at this additional funding and get this sorted out. And I have a feeling that this will be quickly move forward. It's a little different, like in the past, like when they're making a big bilateral change where they need to have 50% of the provinces that represent 50% of the producers and one third of the provinces to sign up. I think this will be a little bit different. So I think it'll be going in just more like in a benefit change where the provinces can sign as a guideline change to it.
So you see the provinces stepping up and participating then, and not going, not saying no.
I haven't talked to every single administration of the provinces, but I've got two or three three provinces that I've spoken to. They seem very positive. I know one province that, I can share because it's already, the province of BC is already doing that. So for 2024, they had already increased the cap to $6.1 million, and they're paying 90%, and they're paying 100% of their share through the province because of all the disasters they've had in the wine industry and the freeze. So they started it. So I'm assuming that they would be on site because this is something they're already doing. And a couple of the provinces that I spoke to, they seem very positive and thrilled about this change.
And of course, there is political risk here because we're in the middle of an election. So
yes.
Now we could take the indication that the Liberals would move forward with this policy if Mr. Carney is successful. But if the Conservatives win, I guess that's the unknown in terms of what they do in response to this. For producers that are listening, what do they need to do at this point in time?
Yeah, I mean, a very, very good question, Sean. I mean, there's always a political risk, but I think your point, well, what do the producers need to do? They need to make sure, these are uncertain times. There's going to be an impact to you with this geopolitical trade issues. So make sure you're signed up for AgriStability. The deadline to sign up is April 30th. So that's the first step, to make sure you're signed up for AgriStability so you can qualify for all these benefits. I would strongly suggest doing a risk management plan on your farm. What does this impact look like? We've done some ag risk management projector, which we've talked to you in the past, where we looked at, okay, what would the impact be if there's a 20% drop across some of the commodities? We've taken a look and say what kind of impact it will have. What is going to be the hit to your balance sheet, and how much of this is going to be covered by these programs? So there'll be very good coverage. We are in those times where we've had the commodity prices and everything's have been good, so the margins are looking really, really good. So there's going to be a lot of protection provided through the AgriStability program. But we need to make sure the first step is sign up for the program. It's very inexpensive. Let them know by April 30th that you're signing up for the AgriStability program, and then look at a risk management plan for your farm and see what kind of impacts it can have.
So, AJ, you know this program better than anybody. You look at the technicals of this and the changes that are being proposed. Do you feel that they are sufficient? Is there more to potentially do? Or is it, I had one listener say, hey, it's just lipstick on a pig. That's kind of harsh, but how do you view all these suggested changes?
Well, personally, I view it as a very positive change. The AgriStability program's intent is to keep your farm viable and give you time to make adjustments when you're going through a big change like this. So I think would this help? Yes, it'll help you kind of buy some time to kind of adjust. Is it going to be an adjustment, of finding a new market or finding a new product? So depending on what kind of farming you're doing and what your market is, what it's going to look like, it's going to try to buy you some time to adjust to that change. Is it going to be an answer for everything? No, AgriStability is not an answer for everything. If we get a new, a change happens, we adjust into a new market, the prices are going to be different, your profitability is going to be different, it's going to get adjusted to that. So it's not going to be a long-term answer or a solution to it. It is there for 1 or 2 years when a situation like this happens, comes in. And AgriStability program has proven itself during COVID. Like AgriStability was used in a similar way without increasing the payout compensation rate or the payment cap, but it responded well to the changes that were happening at the COVID time. So in my mind, yes, I think these are very positive changes, and the AgriStability program will give you an opportunity to kind of adjust to the market signals.
Hey, I want to tell everybody out there about Oxbow, the latest innovation from New Farm, a versatile broadleaf in-crop herbicide powered by Duplassin technology. Oxbow is your workhorse on resistant kochia and other tough weeds. Go to newfarm.ca or talk to your local ag retailer. I know AJ, he's dealing with those hard-to-kill weeds in the backyard. He's definitely thinking about Oxbow. Hey, AJ, thanks so much for shedding some light on this. And as this progresses, we'll definitely be following up with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Shaun. Really happy to be here.
That is AJ Gill with MNP. Of course, you can find out more by going to mmp.ca. We'll be right back on RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM, right after this.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is your one-stop shop for everything a canola grower needs. Check out our free video series on YouTube for all the latest in canola agronomy, research, marketing, and more. Don't have time to watch? Download the podcast version of the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com or anywhere you download your podcasts. Stay on top of all things canola with the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
FP Genetics brings new seed genetics to Canadian farms, empowering growers to thrive in an ever-changing set of conditions. Visit fpgenetics.ca and join thousands of Canadian growers who trust FP Genetics to deliver innovative, reliable seed genetics season after season. Experience the next wave by going to fpgenetics.ca. It's time for another episode of the Farm Safety Roundup, episode 13. Today is Staying Grounded Amid Upheaval, and we'll be talking to Nicole Sherman. Looking forward to it. Managing risk it's a critical component of a successful farming operation. Staying profitable means staying on top of fluctuating markets, unpredictable weather patterns, and other factors that can really impact your farm income. The uncertainty around the onset of tariffs is an added stressor on top of all this, and a significant one for Canadian farmers. In this climate, health and safety may not be the top priority, but Nicole Sherman is here to share why it should be, particularly when it comes to mental health and, of course, your personal well-being. Nicole, it is great to meet you.
Same to you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you're a health and safety consultant with Workplace Safety and Prevention Services, WSPS. Nicole, likely safe to say that given all the upheaval in the world and all the distractions and, the uncontrollables, people are pretty distracted right now. And I'm guessing that can't be really good for for safety stats out there.
You're exactly right. There's just so many compounding and triggering stressors that we have, and you've already touched on it. The elephant in the room is the tariffs right now, and that the ag sector is dealing with in that case. And we're coming into planting season and preparing for that. And there's just a number of different stressors. And when something draws your attention away from the task, that you're doing, especially when we're working around major hazards like heavy equipment and large animals and toxic chemicals, this absolutely is a safety concern. There's a lot of routine activities that we do in farming, but we can't function on autopilot. And, when people are distracted and not paying attention, then we tend to fail to see some of these hazards. And so what does that cause is potentially injury, or heaven forbid, a fatality on the job. And there can be costly errors. We see lower productivity and downtime and damage to the equipment and property. So it's very important that we are not just physically ready to handle the task at hand, but also mentally ready as well.
Yeah, farming it's a physically demanding job, maybe less so than a couple generations ago, but it is physically demanding work. But it's also important to remember that we're not just talking about the physical health and safety, but also the people's mental health and personal well-being as well.
Yeah, our well-being hinges on being, physically well, but also mentally well and socially well as well. And we all have mental health, right? We all have mental health, and it's just a matter of whether or not we're in a state of good mental health or poor mental health. And that's no different from our physical health as well. And according to the Farmers Health Alliance, there are farmers in Canada do face high stress, and over half of Canadian farmers report that they've experienced anxiety, which is much greater than any other sector that we see. And, there are staggering statistics out there to say too that, suicidal thoughts are on the minds of our farmers as well. And, the unpredictability of things and everyone needing to know their limits. But it's also good to know when we don't prioritize our mental health, even simple chores can become stressful, right? And physically or mentally responding to that stress is definitely not a sign of weakness.
Yeah, mental health has been commanding more and more attention in agriculture. You think about all the farm meetings. There seems to always be a concurrent session now, at least one, having to do with this topic. Do you think we're making some headway breaking down some of the stigmas?
I think we are, and you're exactly on point with saying that we now are starting to see this conversation, this topic to come up more and more. And there was actually a study done by the University of Guelph in 2018 that said about 40% of farmers said they would be uneasy seeking help. It'd be interesting to see kind of what those numbers are as we've kind of progressed with it. But there has been progress in the last 6 years, but the stigma around mental health in agriculture is a persistent issue and still a concern. And I think that some of that revolves around just a lack of understanding of the mental health challenges that, farmers face, and the perception that, maybe we were going to be seen as weak or unable to perform the work. And sometimes we also see that rural areas often lack adequate mental health resources, but it's so important that we break down this stigma in order to help those who are suffering in silence right now. And I will say that I have spoken with farmers, and I do feel that they are starting to feel more comfortable in voicing the struggles and the challenges that they face on the farm and how that is impacting their mental health overall, and that they acknowledge that things aren't easy. It's okay to say that I'm not okay today, and that, farmers are some of the most resilient people I know, but they're still human. Right? They're not robots running on autopilot. I do think that there is almost this appreciation for the increased attention that mental health is getting in agriculture, because it's almost giving this, gateway or openness to allow farmers to have a safe space and really talk about what's going on, be open, be real and honest about what they're facing and their struggles.
Yeah, and the other thing, just like the consumer is not this one homogeneous unit, the farmer is not singular either. We've got a very diverse workforce, right? We got young workers, we got old boys, we got migrant farm workers, and all of them are going to face different kinds of mental health challenges throughout the season, and not only different challenges, but probably how they deal with it.
You're exactly right. The one size idea definitely does not fit all, right? One size doesn't fit all in this case. And, you think of even, like you pointed out, the migrant workers that we get in Canada and the challenges that they face, maybe due to isolation, missing family, the cultural and potential language barriers, lack of education and understanding health and safety and those types of things in Canada. So there are programs that do exist. Examples are, the Farmer Wellness Initiative for International Agricultural Worker Wellness Program, which does provide mental health support to those migrant farm workers. And there are others as well that exist, but it is very important to have, resources that are relevant to the audience. And I think that farming is very unique, and there are supports and resources out there that are geared towards farming and that sector. Providing resources in different languages is important. Having different touch points, tailgate talks, encouraging the dialogue. And the same, again, very true for those young workers and the old boys that are out there too, and what are they experiencing. So very important to have diverse and relevant supports for those in the farming sector.
Yeah, no, while so much is going on here, and, on the farm and maybe in our heads as we're trying to juggle all of it, dealing with the unpredictability and additional stresses that are being heaped upon everybody all the time, that's not going to change. But
no.
Action items, okay? What are some things that farmers of all types can do to prioritize their mental health? What are those action items?
I love this question because I think that it doesn't have to be something big. It can be something small, such as just staying connected. We need to make time to still connect with family and friends and fellow farmers throughout the day. I get that we're going to be coming into go time here, planting season. You think of harvest time, which is another major go time as well. But, getting time to connect with family, make sure you come in for dinner or, have some type of connect point with those individuals and the ones who understand your challenges and what you are going through, joining local ag-related community groups and seeking peer supports. Another one I think of is making sure that we set boundaries, right, between work and personal time. Make sure you do take regular breaks, and that's not just good for your mental health, that's good for your physical health as well. Looking forward to taking some time off when you're able. Understanding that, farming does have its ebbs and flows. So we are going to come into peak season, but we know that there will be some lulls that we can go and we can organize and schedule some time. We need to try and prevent that burnout. Even finding your own, ways of coping, whether that's maybe you are more introverted and just like to read and or have quiet time is great. Maybe listening to music, getting some exercise, going for a walk, even just turning the TV on at the end of the day and watching that hockey game is great kind of unwind time. And we need to find those things that are those healthy ways of recharging our battery so that we can still be, that important person that our farm needs at the end of the day to keep it running. Because if you're not healthy, the farm isn't going to run as good as it should, right? Yeah. Exercise and nutrition is key, right? Maintaining a healthy diet, regular physical activity certainly improves that overall well-being. And I also do think that being open to learning about mental health, and this kind of goes back to my kind of comment about we're breaking down that stigma, but understanding, mental illness, understanding that it isn't just a switch that we can turn on and off, right? No one decides, when they wake up in the morning or decide for themselves that they want to be diagnosed with depression, right? Just like we don't decide for ourselves that, we'd like to be diagnosed with cancer or heart disease, we have to start looking at mental illness the same as physical illnesses that we get. And it isn't something that we choose to put on ourselves. And there actually is, through the Farmer Wellness Initiative, and In the Know, it's called In the Know, and it's a session that you can sign up for. And it's a, couple hour session where you can learn more about mental illness and the specifics in ag. So, And I do think it's also important to to access those support services. Feel okay to say I need help, or talk to someone else when you think they need to be reached out to because you're seeing something different in them, and you think that they may need some support.
In addition to WSPS, which has a whole library of resources, what are some other focused supports and resources for farmers to access regarding mental health issues?
Yeah, the Agriculture Wellness Ontario, and I would stress to say for other provinces and areas of Canada, certainly look into what is local to your province and your jurisdiction. But an example is the Farmer Wellness Initiative, which provides farmers and farm families and their employees, spouses, dependents, free mental health counseling specific to the unique challenges that can be experienced by the agriculture community, which is so important. So you have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, English, French, Spanish languages to be able to have that support provided. The Guardian Network, also a great network as far as volunteers come get some individualized training on suicide prevention program. They can kind of complete that training program, and they're equipped then with strategies and tools to identify the signs of mental distress and to be able to react to farmers at risk and know what direction to point them in to receive appropriate mental health crisis resources. Canada-wide, we have the National Farmer Mental Health Alliance offering mental health services and training tailored, again, to farmers, farm families, and veterinarians. Also look for your local kind of suicide crisis helpline. For Ontario, it's 988. So truly that is getting into speaking about the most severe and more high risk type of situations where we are getting suicidal thoughts, and there are people there able to help you work through that by just calling a quick and easy number. So,
and Nicole, anything else to just wrap up this pretty heavy subject? Pretty, as we're like just about to start to get a little bit closer to put seed in the ground here. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, as you can tell, I think I'm pretty passionate about this topic, but it is very critical, especially during these stressful times that we're facing, to continue the conversation. And I think that's what I try to impart all the time I do sessions like this, is to continue to have the conversation and start to feel comfortable having the conversation, especially here now in the ag sector. And again, it helps to make it easier for those to speak up and ask for help and feel okay. And if you've had someone reach out to you to say, I'm not okay today, then you should be patting yourself on the back because you have created a safe environment. You have created a rapport and a relationship with that individual that they feel safe to say, I'm not okay today and I need some help, or I need a listening ear. So it's okay to reach out and ask how someone is doing when you notice that they're not themselves. And if it's not today that they want to talk to you, you've at least opened the door where they may then reach out at a later point. So another critical piece is to make sure that we don't judge those for speaking up and seeking help, but to look at that person as almost being very courageous and brave enough to prioritize their mental health and well-being, knowing the stigma that exists within mental health and within the sector around this topic. But our mental health is just as important as our physical health, and we need to treat them the same.
Well, I encourage everybody out there in the audience to access free and easy to use resources on this subject. Go to WSPS.ca/farm safety. That's WSPS.ca/farm safety. Nicole, it has been great to chat with you. Thank you so much for joining us here for the Farm Safety Roundup.
That's awesome. Thanks for having me.
Also want to remind everybody out there to check out Season 6, Episode 1. We heard part of the interview yesterday. Abby Pollock was here on the show. It is a new season of the Pest and Predator podcast that is brought to you by Field Heroes, powered by the Western Grains Research Foundation. Whether you're a farmer, researcher, or educator, visit fieldheroes.ca to learn how beneficial insects can help you. If you have any feedback on today's program, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or of course you can always call the Real Ag feedback line, 855-776-61 24/7. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio. We'll chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this RealAg Radio podcast, brought to you by Travalis Herbicide from FMC. When your crops need in-season protection against key weeds, Travalis Herbicide is the go-to heavyweight for combating large weeds like late-stage wild buckwheat, cleavers, and kochia. And with the 2025 FMC Cashback Program, you can save up to 15%. Visit ag.fmc.com/CA today.